So in this episode, folks, I'm going to teach you how to make pine sap lamps, oil lamps, and torches, and stuff like that. In the first video, I kind of touched on that subject, but in this video, we're going to go into a little bit more detail because this technology is really important. And you got to have good light, you got to have good heat, and those two things are kind of the source of everything else that you make. So let's explore oil lamps and pine sap lamps. As you can see here, this oil lamp looks like a crab, and it has a bracket fungus that I use for a wick, and the bracket fungus wick works well with oil and pine sap, and you can burn oil or pine sap in any of these lamps that I'm about to show you, including this one. And this one here is extremely elegant, and as you can see, I've got it set up nice in my house because it's just so cool. And this is a bracket fungus that I've carved strips into, and I can burn pine sap on that, or I can soak it in oil and burn oil on it. And you can see I have a piece of pine sap and a piece of old man's beard to light it with. And so that's a really convenient torch, or a stove. You can use this as a stove to cook on, or a lighting torch. Now this is a oil lamp that I made, and yeah, I have a mussel shell and a few stones holding up a bracket fungus wick once again, and it just has a shallow oil bowl that you can refill as it burns it up, and you can burn one of these lights all night long with just a minimum amount of oil. And so they're easy to make, and they're really convenient, and they're the source of all tool making even. And this oil lamp, it's made out of Crisco or lard, so the oil gets stiff when it's cold. But you can light these with a tinder bundle, as I've demonstrated laying on top of the wick. You can't see the wick underneath, but there's a tinder bundle right there. And when you light the tinder bundle, it lights the wick. And this kind of a stove will burn for up to 15 hours without having to do anything to it. Let's see. Now, it doesn't have to be cold outside for you to appreciate having adequate lighting and good heat to cook with. And the stuff that I'm showing you here will put you right in a place where you need to be as far as having that. Even these torches that we're looking at right here, they burn pine sap or oil, and they give you a lot of light. You can cook on them. You can just do so many things. They are absolutely amazing. So you don't need to be a guy that makes television shows to understand the value of having good equipment. Being able to make strong, suitable rope is no less of a skill. So as you can see here, these knots are very simple knots to tie, but they're the crux of everything. You know, if you can't tie these basic knots, then there's a lot of things you're not going to be doing out in the woods. So I place a lot of emphasis on knot tying, rope making, and methods of lashing and methods of not lashing to bring my survival skills together, you know, in a complete circle. So this rope comb right here is it's a rope rake, and it's for combing out fibers of material to make fishing lines and stuff out of, because it organizes the material in a way that allows the user to make really fine lines, or you can make, even thick ropes. And using a tool like this, you can adjust the size of the material and make exactly what you need. And this type of a knife is great for cutting sheet material like leather and things like that. Just because of the way the knife itself is made, it's really suitable for cutting those kinds of materials. And it's just a piece of bone, but man, it cuts so effectively that you'd think it was made out of steel or something. And you can see this fishing line right here. It's handmade, hand twisted, and the hook that you see on the end of it, it's permanently attached to it. It's not just tied on, it's actually woven into the material itself. And these fish hooks attach onto the end of those types of lines, and they attach in a special way because they don't lash. You don't actually tie them on. What they do is they spin into the loops of the rope itself and hold fast so that it won't pull out. And so it's a no tying type method for attaching fish hooks. So this nut and seed grinder that you see right here, you can make them two different ways. You can use a chisel and carve the wood out to make a nice deep bowl inside of it, or you can use the wood burning method, which is what I use. And what you do is you burn a hole into the end of the wood until it's as deep as you like, and then I use a mandrel to do the burning with, so that when I'm done, the bowl and the mortar and the mandrel, the tip of the mandrel, are both shaped the same way. They have the same arcs and curves, because the two burning pieces of wood were kind of rubbed together as it was being made. And what that does is it matches the surfaces of the two pieces, the mandrel and the mortar and the pestle. It makes those two pieces matched up. So the main and most important thing to remember when you're making traps is that your trap trigger has to release at a low pressure point as opposed to a high pressure point. And what that does is it allows the trap to spring smoothly and easily. And if you arrange your trigger to release at a high pressure point, the trigger gets stuck, and a lot of times the animal will go in the trap, they'll get the bait, they'll leave the trap, and you never catch the animal. So it's a really clever game to be able to build traps and devise ways of finding a low pressure point to release the trap, so that you increase your chances of catching the animal. And as you can see with this bent stick deadfall that I have here, this stick itself reaches all the way to the base of the deadfall stone itself. And what that does is it causes the animal to go as deep into the trap as possible. And that also, it increases the leverage that the stick has, where it joins the two uprights that hold the trap itself up. And so that added leverage lowers the amount of pressure that resists the trigger stick from coming off. So what that means is that the trigger stick comes off really, really easy. And so it's just a very, very sensitive trap. So you just barely touch the bait stick and the trap collapses. And that's what you want to catch an animal. That's what you need. You need that condition, and you need that condition with every single trap that you make. It's not just with a deadfall. It's with any trap that has a trigger. You have to arrange that trigger so that it releases at a low pressure point. there's something special about this lamp that I'd like to tell you about. And, well, the lamp itself is extremely special because it's a 4,000 to 5,000 year old Native American manufactured oil lamp that I found out in the woods. So it's an actual artifact. And as you can see, it's extremely beautiful. And yeah, the shell that you see underneath of it, I acquired that myself, right? To make the bowl out of, to burn the oil. So you fill that shell bowl up with oil, you know, yeah, it's just a little, you know, it's a shallow puddle, but you make a shallow puddle of oil in there and you put the bracket fungus wick on it. It makes a really, really excellent and beautiful candle. But the purpose of that was for storytelling. And if you'll notice, there's 3 stones that are right behind the lamp. And the stone on the right hand side, it kind of looks like a cougar's head almost, you know, the profile of it. And yeah, well, you guessed it. That lamp, the light from the lamp is used to cast shadows onto a wall. So the Native American people, what they would do is they would make story stones. And a story stone is a stone that casts a shadow that resembles something that you know very well, but when you look at the stone itself, you can't see it. You know, the image only appears when you cast a shadow from it. And it was used in storytelling. You know, it's telling the ancient legends and the myths. And so, you know, a native storyteller would have, you know, many very good story stones that would, deliver different images. And he would use those to retell all the legends. And so that makes this lamp a really, really incredible thing. To think about that you know, it was used in that way. The story stones that you see behind the lamp, those are actual shadow stones or story stones that I was just telling you about. Those are actual pieces that I was able to reacquire and put together. And yeah, I mean, that's intriguing, really, really intriguing stuff. And I'd like to write a paper on it, you know. I'd like to write a document on it and, you know, provide the materials I have as a source material to for study. And so that's where a lot of my efforts go. And, you know, in survival, you know, I don't just collect the stuff to feed myself and have a light to look at. You know, a lot of the materials that I work with, I further go on to research, and then I document the stuff, and I write books about it. I do research, I talk about it, I educate other people, you know. And so that to me is more important than, you know, doing the survival stuff. And so really, that's what really drives me in all of my survival practices, is, you know, the end product of the research that I do and the documentation, you know, the accumulation of data that, you know, leads to an increase in knowledge. So that's why this lamp is so important. You know, that's why this lamp I set aside and, you know, brought back to life in such a elegant and decorative way, is because it deserves that amount of attention and respect. You know, because of the reasons that I just told you. So my method of making the hand lines to fish with is really convenient for me, and I like having a hand line. You know, most people are accustomed to using fishing poles. You know, when they go fishing, they think they have to have a fishing pole. But I like to have just a loose hand line that I can coil up in my hand and toss out. And living up here in the north and living in mountains and stuff like that, where there's trout, where there's salmon, where there's river fish, using a hand line is really a lot better than using a fishing pole in most cases, because you have more control over the line itself, and you can use it in more places. Like in really crowded streams and brooks where branches hang down over the creek, a fishing pole is extremely difficult to use. But a hand line, you can toss that out, in kind of underhand fashion, and hit those spots that you want to hit. And it doesn't matter that there's branches up above, because you miss all that just by tossing the hand line the way you toss it. So it makes it really convenient. And using the grapevine claspers with a hand twisted rope is really convenient, because you don't have to tie the hooks onto the line. Because the fishing hook has a spiral on it, and you turn that spiral into the loops of the hand spun cord itself. And what it does is it locks it all together where it can't come apart. It's like turning a screw into a piece of wood. A little screw grabs onto each place where it penetrates the line and goes through it. It grabs onto it right there. So if you have 3 points of contact there, then you have a fish hook that holds onto the line, and you didn't have to tie it. So that's why these wasp lures that I'm showing you here are so clever and so important. And let me tell you what, once you put one on the hook, they won't come off. And especially when a fish bites onto it and the pressure of the fish is on it, they really don't come apart, because they have that tension on them to hold them together. And there again, you'll just have to try the technique and use it a little bit to find out what I'm talking about. So if you intend on using this method, you will learn real quick that my suggestions are the top notch and absolutely the best suggestions that you can get anywhere. So you just have to try the method, that's all.